Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Cándida was in a hurry to get home. Lately, very strange things had been happening around her and Maximino's family. Maximino was involved in business, and like any businessman of his caliber, there were enemies and jealous people around him. He tried to balance and maneuver among these people, but now things had become incredibly difficult. One of his main competitors had unmistakably hinted that he wanted to merge their companies. Maximino, of course, refused. And now they were being subjected to inspections from all possible and impossible authorities. Today, since early morning, Cándida had felt uneasy. She always sensed when something was about to happen. And today she had that bad feeling, plus her husband wasn't answering the calls. Cándida had already reached the entrance when suddenly she heard behind her. Cándida. Cándida turned around and saw two men. They were clearly with a criminal past. She stopped and looked at them. Well, in broad daylight, they're unlikely to drag me somewhere or hurt me. It's only 6 in the evening. There are plenty of women with children in the courtyard, Cándida reasoned, but her anxiety has been mounting. The men approached her closely. "Are you Cándida Alcalde?" One of them asked in a rough voice. "Yes, what do you want?" "Listen," they immediately got to the point. "Tell your fiancé to agree easily to all the conditions they offer him, unless he wants things to turn out bad. Otherwise, he'll be searching for you for a very long time. And there's a chance he won't find you." The second one said loudly and laughed. That laughter made Cándida feel uneasy. A shiver ran through her body, and she trembled as if from the cold. "Did you get it?" The first one clarified. "Yes, I'll tell him." "Good girl." They got into a huge jeep and abruptly sped away. Cándida didn't even have time to note down their license plate number. She tried to deal with the anxiety that has been already mounting her before this incident. Cándida took out her keys from her purse and opened the entrance door. She never used the elevator as she suffered from claustrophobia, so she hurried up to the 3rd floor on her feet. She opened the apartment door and practically rushed inside. Whether it was due to the fear she experienced during the encounter with the criminals or her concerns for her husband, Cándida entered quickly and locked the door behind her, locking the door. There was no one in the apartment, and it was strange. Maximino had said he would be working with papers at home all day. His phone was lying on the coffee table in the living room, which was even more peculiar. He never went outside without his phone, knowing how sensitive and anxious his wife was. Cándida thought that Maximino might be in the bathroom. But he wasn't in the bathroom or the other 2 rooms either. Cándida sat down on the couch in the living room and burst into tears. Her nerves were on edge. She worried about her husband and didn't know where he could have gone. And most importantly, where should she look for him? She took his phone in her hands to check whom he had called and at what time. But the call log was empty. There was no outgoing or incoming calls. Cándida started going through other folders in Maximino's phone, but there was nothing there either. "I don't understand," Cándida exclaimed in surprise. She paced around the living room, trying to figure out what all of this meant and where Maximino had disappeared to. Why hadn't he called her? Where did he go? Exactly, he went somewhere on his car. I need to check where Maximino's car is. Cándida thought, and she ran down to the parking lot. But the car was in its usual spot. So, Maximino went on foot. Maybe he just went to the store, and here I am assuming all sorts of nonsense here. Cándida tried to reassure herself. She sat on a bench near the entrance and waited for her husband. An hour passed, but Maximino didn't return home. Cándida dialed the number of her close friend. "Tanita, hi. Can you come over? I really need your help." "Hi, Cándida. I can tell something has happened from the sound of your voice." Cándida started crying. "Maximino is missing." "How can it be?" "Don't make things up. Just because his phone is off doesn't mean he's missing," her friend smiled, knowing very well how Cándida could exaggerate any problem. "Well, I'll come soon." I'll be there in half an hour. I'm waiting for you desperately, Cándida said, still crying. She went back up to the apartment, sat on the couch, and waited for her husband or her friend. She just wanted anyone to come. Cándida arrived about 40 minutes later. When she rang the doorbell, Cándida jumped on the couch and rushed to open the door. She desperately wanted it to be Maximino. I can see you hope to see someone else right now. Cándida understood Cándida's expression. I'm sorry, I don't know what to think. She was on the verge of tears, but Cándida knew how to stop her friend in time. Wait a minute. At first, tell me everything, and then we can cry if needed. Cándida recounted that Maximino hadn't left the house for the past 3 days and had been busy with his business affairs. She mentioned the encounter with the criminals near the entrance and the fact that her husband had left his phone behind at home. Cándida, hold on, I still don't get it. Did Maximino have business problems? Yes, he got involved with some very serious people. They wanted to merge 2 companies, but you know how it's done nowadays. After that, they would simply take away his business and that's it. I got it. What I don't understand is why he didn't seek help from the authorities. Who exactly do you mean? The police. Well, or where else do people go in such cases? Cándida, are you serious? These people have their connections everywhere, and in this case, seeking help, or rather, protection, would have been pointless, and Maximino understood that perfectly. Last year, one businessman went through a similar merger. He tried to seek help, and they immediately stole his child. In the end, he was left without a business and without money because they took everything. Well, it's an unpleasant story. But to lose a business isn't the worst thing in life. The worst is to lose loved ones. Maybe he should have sold his business and you could have just moved to another city? It's not a problem to start a business anywhere if you have money. I wanted to suggest that to Maximino, but then I thought his partner would definitely not agree to it. Listen, what does his partner have to do with it? Your Maximino is the owner of the company, so he should make the decisions. When he comes back, I'll help you persuade him. Cándida smiled, pleased with her resourcefulness and the solution she found. Let's give it a try, but I don't believe your plan will lead us to a positive outcome. Maximino will refuse, you'll see. Well, at least we'll offer it, and he can decide for himself. Agreed. Cándida and Cándida waited for Maximino until midnight. By that time, Cándida no longer doubted that something bad had happened to her husband. Even the usually calm and even-tempered Cándida paced around the room, contemplating what to do and where to look for her friend's husband. Unable to come up with a better plan, she began calling hospitals, then morgues, and finally police stations. None of them had anyone resembling Maximino. I think he was kidnapped. Cándida was about to cry. They will keep him until he willingly signs all the documents. Cándida looked at her friend, knowing that this could really happen. However, she didn't want to scare or upset Cándida, so she said something completely different. Hold on, don't panic just yet. Let's wait. Sometimes there are absurd situations, and our minds always paint the worst-case scenario. No, Cándida, I'm sure something happened to him. We've been together for 8 years, and I can feel him even when we're apart. Listen, I understand that we don't plan on going to sleep anytime soon. Let's drink some wine and relax a bit. It's rare when I'll gladly have a drink. Maybe it will at least stop my trembling. Cándida retrieved a bottle of wine and poured a glass for each of them, and then another one. The women ended up falling asleep on the couch in the living room, closer to 6 in the morning when they were completely tired, but the wine had helped them relax considerably. Cándida woke up to a rustling noise in the hallway and looked at her friend. Cándida was still asleep. Perhaps it's Maximino, he's drunk, so he's struggling to open the door, she hoped. But her assumption was wrong. Approaching the door, Cándida peered through the peephole and saw 2 men who clearly didn't come for a friendly visit. Cándida pressed herself against the wall so that she wouldn't be noticed from outside. All right, the door is sturdy, all the locks are secure. There are 3 of them, and one has a secret technique. It won't be easy for them to open it. So, the chances of them getting in are zero. I need to call the police, the girl decided and dialed the number. With difficulty, as she whispered, she explained the problem to the officer on duty, then returned to the living room and woke up her friend. Please be quiet. She pressed a finger to her lips. What happened? Cándida asked, frightened. There are two thugs trying to break down the door, but there's no chance they'll succeed. And I've already called the police. Did you see them? Well, yes, through the peephole. Probably, it's the ones who came to see me yesterday. One of them had short hair, a round face, and the other was skinny and scary looking. Yes, that's them. But I don't understand why they would break into your apartment, Cándida wondered. What are they looking for here? Probably they're looking for Maximino, Cándida guessed. At that moment, shouts and footsteps could be heard in the hallway. It seemed like the police had arrived. Cándida ran to the door and looked through the peephole when someone rang the bell. Two police officers were standing in front of the door, and the criminals were nowhere to be seen. She opened the door. Hello, did you call the police? Yes, two men were trying to break down our door. The criminals were detained. Do you know who they are? No, of course not. Why? You'll have to come with us. Why? It's mandatory, said one police officer, while the other remained silent. Then Cándida noticed an unusual tattoo on the second officer's hand. It was very strange for a policeman. All right, let me change clothes and I'll come down, said Cándida and quickly closed the door. The police officers clearly didn't expect such a swift reaction from the young woman, so they didn't have time to respond. Cándida locked the door with all the locks and pressed herself against the wall. Her heart was pounding in her temples so strongly that she couldn't even think. Cándida, we have a problem. She whispered to her friend. What's wrong? The frightened friend didn't understand. Those aren't cops, they're imposters. What do you mean? I mean it literally. They're not police officers. I noticed a tattoo on one of them, a very specific one. My brother used to be into tattoos, and he explained a lot to me when I foolishly wanted to get one myself. Well, one of them has a tattoo that no real cop would ever have. So, what do we do now? You called the police, so they should come, right? They should come, but when? So, here's what we'll do, Cándida decided. While they're coming, quickly gather your things. Only the essentials and valuables, documents, money, necessities for the first future. You'll come with me. But what about Maximino? What if he comes home and I'm not here? He'll think I've abandoned him. Calm down. You can leave him a note explaining that you've left. Let him call you on your mobile. Haven't you changed it? I don't like this idea. Do you prefer sitting at home trembling? Sorry, but I Sadie here with you. And in such an atmosphere, I'm not comfortable either, sorry. Fine, I agree. I'll go insane here without you. Cándida took out her suitcase and began packing her things. But when she opened the safe to retrieve the money, she screamed in surprise. It was empty. Inside, there was only her passport. Cándida, come here. She called her friend. What happened? All our money is missing. This is unbelievable. Seriously, all of it? Can't you see there's nothing here? Cándida sarcastically remarked. How much was there? Quite a lot. Unbelievable. Where could it have gone? I have no idea. Well, I think I know. Maximino took it. No one else could. Cándida looked at Cándida, astonished. How could he have taken it? What about me? Cándida asked naively, like a child. Oh, what kind of a relationship you two have? I don't understand what's going on at all. And for some reason, I have a feeling that nothing good is happening. Cándida, I don't understand anything. Cándida burst into tears again. She felt hurt and frightened at the same time. She couldn't understand how her husband could leave her without a penny, without saying a word. Where did he go, and what was she supposed to do now? The doorbell rang, and the friends tensed up. Cándida even stopped crying, and Tanita went to look through the peephole again. There were real police officers standing outside the door this time. Tanita decisively opened the door, and a young policeman introduced himself and asked what had happened. Emotionally, Tanita recounted the events of the morning. They spoke in the hallway, and the police officer took detailed notes, assuring them that they would investigate. After noting Tanita's phone number, they left. Tanita asked the apartment owner to postpone their conversation for another time. When they left, Tanita said to her friend, "Let's quickly grab your things and leave before they come back." "Is your apartment under safe system?" "Yes." "Great, let's gather our things and leave." Cándida quickly changed clothes, grabbed her suitcase, put the apartment under a law-compliant safe system, and they left. Both friends remained silent throughout the journey. Tanita was thinking about where to hide Cándida, while Cándida was contemplating what to do next. "You can't come to my place, that's for sure. They will look for you among your close ones, and many people know that we've been friends since childhood. We need to find a place where no one would even suspect you could be." "What should we do then?" Tanita pondered. "Maybe rent a cottage somewhere?" "Legally." "Great idea, but not for you." "Well, I mean, not with your documents. And not with mine. I know someone who can help us." Tanita called someone, had a quick conversation, and hung up. 10 minutes later, she received a call back with an address to go to. "Fantastic, my friend. All-inclusive, 2 weeks of bliss. I even envy you." "Why?" "That I have to hide? That I don't know where my husband is and that criminals are looking for me? Great reason for envy." "No, it's just such a luxurious place, very quiet and beautiful. No strangers around." They arrived at the resort closer to evening. It was located in a forest, far from the city. It was truly a magnificent place. Pine forest, a lake, small cottages, beautiful paths with flower beds, benches, and gazebos, a real fairy tale. Indeed, it's a very beautiful place. When else would I have such a relaxing time? Cándida smiled for the first time in the past 2 days. Tanita helped her friend settle into the cottage, where they registered her under a fictional name without providing any documents. The house where Cándida would be staying for the next 2 weeks was divided into 2 parts. Cándida's accommodation consisted of a room, a small living room, a hallway, and a bathroom. Everything inside was wood-paneled, except for the bathroom. A huge bed occupied almost the entire room. Tanita walked around the room and nodded approvingly to someone unseen. "Well done, Vital." Then she turned to her friend. "Did you keep your phone turned off? I'm taking it with me so you won't be traced. There's a library, a computer room, a gym, and 2 restaurants here. In short, you'll have plenty to do. Today is Wednesday, I'll come here on Friday evening. Spend 2 days here without me and without any adventures, all right? And most importantly, behave normally, don't cry, and don't attract unnecessary attention." "But what should I do? And what about work?" "I'm scheduled to be on duty at the hospital tomorrow." "Okay, write a leave application, and I'll take it to your workplace. Is there someone you could suddenly go to?" "I only have an aunt in the capital. I don't have any other relatives." "Perfect. The farther, the better. Just write that you urgently flew to her." Cándida wrote the application, said goodbye to her friend, and returned to her cottage. She hadn't had the opportunity to relax like this for a long time, especially in solitude. After taking another look at her accommodation, where she would be staying for the next 2 weeks, she fell onto the bed and cried. After lying on the bed for about an hour, she suddenly felt incredibly hungry. And then she remembered that she hadn't eaten anything since yesterday's lunch. Cándida resolutely got up from the bed and headed to the shower. Since Cándida didn't know what kind of guests were there, she decided not to take any risks and wore a light blue trouser suit that could pass as both evening attire and casual wear. She put on soft, flat shoes. After taking a final look at herself in the mirror and feeling satisfied with her appearance, she opened the door and stepped outside. As she walked around the cottage, she immediately bumped into her neighbor. "Good evening. Are we neighbors?" The man smiled. "Going to dinner?" "Good evening. It seems we are neighbors if you're from the other half of the house." Cándida pointed towards the other part of the house with her hand. "Yes, from this one. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Constantino." "Nice to meet you. I'm Cándida." She smiled at her neighbor. "Pleasure to meet you too, Cándida. Would you like to join me for dinner? Or do you have a companion?" he asked. "No, I'm here all alone." "Surprising." "Me too. Sorry for the indiscreet question, but are you married?" It would have been better if he hadn't asked that. The reminder of her missing husband instantly soured her mood. Cándida's expression changed, as if she had been splashed with icy water. The smile disappeared from her face, and she looked sternly at Constantino. "I'm sorry, did I say something wrong?" The neighbor became alarmed. Struggling to control her emotions, Cándida composed herself and answered in a somewhat calm tone. "No, it's okay." The neighbor could tell that things were not fine, but he tactfully refrained from asking any further, clearly feeling awkward about spoiling his neighbor's mood. During dinner, they initially remained silent. They placed their orders and silently waited for them to arrive. Cándida chose grilled salmon and a vegetable salad for dinner, while Constantino ordered a stew and some kind of seafood salad. Constantino broke the silence first. "Cándida, would you like a glass of wine as an appetizer and for our meeting?" "Sure." Constantino stood up and went to get the wine, returning with a bottle of red. Cándida noticed the label. It was her favorite wine. After a glass of wine, she started to relax a little, although her thoughts were occupied by Maximino. Charming Constantino was telling some incredible stories from his life. From these stories, Cándida deduced that he was somehow involved with law enforcement. "Your stories are so interesting, Constantino. Do you work in the police?" she asked. "No," the neighbor smiled. "I work in the department for the investigation." "Wow!" Cándida exclaimed in admiration, suddenly realizing that such a connection could come in handy in the future. "Do you need any assistance?" Constantino guessed immediately. "Not at the moment," Cándida smiled. His perceptiveness impressed her. It felt like the neighbor could read her thoughts. Well, that wasn't surprising. They probably trained them for that. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask," he said, pulling out his business card from his pocket and handing it to Cándida. It said, "Constantino Poletto, Chief of the Department for the Investigation of Special Cases." Wow! So young and already holding such a position. I must befriend him for sure, Cándida thought to herself. "You're so young and already in such a position." Cándida said to him admiringly. "Well, how old do you think I am, Cándida?" Constantino smiled mysteriously. "I think you're no older than 40, she guessed. 25 is also younger than 40. Constantino laughed. "Well, then, let me refine my guess. You're 35, 36. Did I get it right?" Cándida asked. "Almost. I'm 34, he replied. "No way." Cándida couldn't believe it. In reality, she thought he was slightly over 40, but she decided not to voice her thoughts. She was always bad at guessing people's ages, and to avoid accidentally offending someone, she simply called the age of less than she was thinking about. "So, you're just a little older than me." No. You don't have to disclose your age. A woman's age is always a mystery. I can guess how old you are, but I don't want you to tell me. The main thing is that you're over 18. "I'm definitely over 18, Cándida laughed. It was easy and pleasant to talk to him, and for a while, she managed to forget about her own worries. After dinner, Cándida herself suggested to Constantino that they take a walk around. "I would love to," An evening stroll contributes to a good night's sleep, especially in such pleasant company, he replied. They walked for about 2 hours until Cándida realized she was terribly tired and might fall asleep right there. Constantino walked her to her door and then headed to his own. Cándida collapsed into bed without even changing her clothes. The day had been too emotionally draining. She woke up the next morning around 7 o'clock, a habit from her early work mornings. After taking a shower and getting dressed, Cándida went for breakfast. Constantino was sitting at the same table where they had dinner the previous night. When he saw Cándida, he waved cheerfully. "Good morning, Constantino." Cándida smiled. "Good morning. How did you sleep in your new place? Did you have any interesting dreams?" Constantino asked. Cándida was surprised by the question. "Do you believe in dreams, Constantino?" "I know for sure that they can predict things," Constantino said somewhat sadly. "Oh, I never would have thought that people in your field could believe in such things," Cándida honestly remarked. "Do you think people in my profession are emotionless robots who act according to instructions?" It seemed like he was a little bit offended. "Constantino, I didn't mean to offend you. I just thought that such beliefs are mostly held by women. And here's this respectable man asking me about dreams. I sincerely apologize. I truly never meant to offend you," Cándida explained. "All right, it's okay. Let's have breakfast," Constantino suggested, but the mood had already been spoiled for both of them. "What can you order for breakfast here?" Cándida asked. "Anything you like. At my own risk, I ordered a porridge and a fruit salad with yogurt for you. Is that all right?" "Constantino, how do you do this?" Cándida asked, amazed, because it was exactly the perfect breakfast she had always dreamed of. "If the porridge also comes with honey, it will be a direct hit." "With honey, right," Constantino smiled. "I'm glad I could please you. You managed to surprise me as well. Not many people can do that." "I'll take it as a compliment," Constantino smiled again. It was clear that he had calmed down and wasn't offended anymore. During breakfast, Constantino talked about his trip to the north, and he had a special way of retelling stories. Even an uninformative story was presented as an adventure novel. "You have an amazing way of telling stories. It makes me want to drop everything and visit the north," Cándida smiled. "Are you trying to flatter me?" Constantino smiled. "I'm not flattering you, Constantino. It's the truth. It's genuinely enjoyable and interesting to talk to you." "I'm glad to hear that. Although my subordinates wouldn't agree." "Perhaps, but I'm not your subordinate. By the way, Cándida, you didn't tell me what you do for a living." "Oh, yes, I missed that part. I'm a doctor." "In what field?" "Pediatrics. I work at the 6th City Hospital in the pediatric department." "That's a great profession and very important. You're doing a fantastic job. I've always had great respect for medical professionals. You save lives." "So do you," Cándida smiled. "And sometimes no less than we do." "We're flattering each other," Constantino smiled. "What an interesting conversation from the early morning." "Yes, indeed. What are your plans for today?" "Can I be honest?" "Please do." "I have no idea. It's my first time here, and I don't really know anything." "What are your hobbies?" "I'll tell you, but don't laugh, okay? Promise?" "I promise. I enjoy fishing and playing billiards." "Wow, quite the hobbies for a young lady." "Well, I can't promise you fishing since we won't have anything where we'll be able to put the fish, but the second one is easy." "Is there a billiards table here?" "Of course." "Shall we play?" "With pleasure." "I just need to change my clothes," Cándida shyly smiled. "Me too. Let's finish breakfast, and then we'll go change. And after that, we'll play." "You've intrigued me, to be honest." After finishing breakfast, the neighbors went to their rooms, agreeing to meet in half an hour near the cottage. Cándida was waiting for Tanita to hear news about Maximino. And being in Constantino's company made it easier, as he distracted her from anxious thoughts with his wonderful stories. That's why Cándida suggested going for a walk and playing billiards, so as not to be alone. They met up and went to play. Cándida managed to win twice, while Constantino only once. Acknowledging Cándida's excellent game, Constantino suggested keeping the score as it was and taking a walk in the forest. Cándida, of course, agreed. The walk turned out to be very pleasant, with the dizzying scent of pine trees and the soothing sounds. I haven't walked in the forest for so long. Thank you, Constantino. Cándida, are you here for long? Probably for 2 weeks, I'm not sure yet, Cándida honestly replied, without realizing how strange her answer might sound. What do you mean, not sure yet? Are you hiding from someone here? Constantino quickly realized. Do you really not need any help? Cándida looked closely at her neighbor. Yes, he was charming and seemed trustworthy. But where was the guarantee that he wasn't on the side of the criminals that take over her husband's business? There was no such guarantee because criminals and their accomplices usually don't look suspicious. Therefore, Cándida couldn't trust him at all. I'm sorry, I gave the wrong impression. I'm not hiding, it's just that I may be called to work at any moment. She was speaking nonsense and could see that Constantino didn't believe her, but he politely nodded and agreed. Yes, yes. I understand. That's what I thought, smiled the neighbor. And how about you? Are you here for long? Cándida decided to change the subject. I'll stay for another week. Came here to relax and reconsider my life. Sounds philosophical. That's how it is. Did something happen to you? Cándida guessed. Yes, I got divorced, Constantino said sadly. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you. It's difficult to find a woman who would understand my work. So, as they say, it comes with the territory. You know, I understand you. My husband also often doesn't understand my work. After all, I can be called to work at any moment, and sometimes I have to work on weekends. You're married? Constantino was surprised. Yes. Why does that surprise you? Because you're here alone, and that's very strange, considering that your husband doesn't like your long absence, Constantino pointed out reasonably. That's just how things turned out, Cándida evasively replied. Honestly, I thought you were also divorced and wanted to rest and distract yourself from everything and everyone. Why did you think that? Because you don't even have a phone with you, Constantino surprised her once again with his observance and insight. You won't believe it, but I forgot it. My friend will come tomorrow and bring it. I don't believe you. Why? Cándida was slightly scared. Because for someone of your profession, a phone is a very important thing. I would say vital. So you're lying when you say you forgot it. He saw Cándida tense up and added, well, let's pretend I believed you really forgot it. It's sometimes difficult to talk to you, Cándida smiled. You see and understand everything. Let's do this. If you ever need my help, you will definitely come to me. And for now, let's stop this clearly unpleasant topic here. Okay? I agree, Cándida smiled again. But thank you, I'm not ready to talk about it yet. And thank you for offering help separately. I would still prefer not to need it. I would really like to help you, Constantino honestly said. But at least you'll leave your phone number, right? Of course. Great. They walked a little longer in the forest and returned to the house. Cándida wanted to rest for a while and suggested meeting Constantino for lunch. Lunch in 15 minutes. Constantino smiled. Have we been walking for so long? Cándida was surprised. I didn't even notice how time flew by. Let's have lunch then and take a little break. I'm feeling tired. And then we'll meet for dinner. And then we'll walk? For sure, we will. After lunch, Cándida lay down to rest. The fresh air and the long walk after her, she drifted off and slept for almost 2 hours. When she woke up, she didn't rush to get up but lay there, thinking about Maximino. Where could he be? If he took money with him, it meant he left on his own. But why didn't he leave me any sign then? What am I supposed to think? It was very strange behavior, but it was not new for her. Cándida remembered how once, when they were still dating, Maximino mysteriously disappeared for 2 weeks. They were already heading towards their wedding, and suddenly this strange disappearance. But back then, at least his friend knew where he was. And now? Who can she ask? In general, Maximino had enough oddities. He often changed his mind and tastes. Cándida was always amazed by that. How could someone with their own successful business be so inconsistent? But in their 8 years of living together, she had almost gotten used to it. Before the wedding, they had only been dating for 6 months. Cándida remembered how they met. It was simple and trite. They met at a cafe. Cándida was chatting with Tanita over a cup of coffee when a young man sat down next to them and suggested celebrating the beginning of his business project. Cándida was surprised at the time. Didn't he have anyone to celebrate such an important event with? But Maximino explained it simply. There were no people around him who would sincerely rejoice in his successes. And Cándida felt sorry for him. They had a glass of champagne together, then Tanita had to leave to do something else, and Maximino walked Cándida home. That's how they started dating. Maximino would give Cándida gifts, invite her to concerts, and they would go on weekend trips to the capital together. It was always fun and interesting with him. Maximino didn't like living a monotonous life. He could turn nothing into a celebration. It charmed and added flavor to their everyday life. On their 3rd wedding anniversary, Maximino came home and said that Cándida had half an hour to pack. They were flying to Cuba. Just like that, he suddenly wanted to. And he was always like that, energetic, full of zest for life, and unpredictable. And now he acted in his own way. He simply disappeared without a word. Yes, the situation around the company was strange and frightening, but to leave his wife without explanations or warnings was going too far. Cándida believed that he would show up soon and explain everything. She was convinced that her husband loved her and would never leave. Cándida didn't realize that dinner time had long passed, and she was still in bed. There was a knock on the door, and Cándida jumped up and went to open it. Constantino was standing at the doorstep. "Miss, I understand that fresh air makes you sleepy, but sleeping the whole day is a bit much." The neighbor smiled. "Sorry, I really lost track of time. Please wait for 5 minutes." Cándida returned to her room, quickly changed clothes, and went out to Constantino. "I'm ready." "Wow, you got ready quickly." Women usually take a long time to get ready. "I'm not an ordinary woman. I know how to get ready very quickly. It's part of my profession." After dinner, they went for a walk. Constantino was telling more stories from his life. Cándida was certain that some of them were made up. But he told them so beautifully and interestingly that she didn't want to interrupt. "You should start writing books," remarked Cándida. "You think so?" "I'm sure. You have an easy style and a very interesting narrative." "I'll consider your proposal," Constantino smiled. They walked for about an hour more and then went back to their rooms. Cándida eagerly awaited the next day and Tanita's arrival, hoping she would learn something about Maximino. The morning followed the same routine: breakfast with Constantino, then a walk, followed by billiards, lunch, and rest. But today, Cándida couldn't fall asleep at all. She was waiting for Tanita. Her friend arrived around 8 o'clock, just in time for dinner. Cándida grabbed her hand and said, "We'll talk after dinner," and dragged her into the restaurant. Constantino was already waiting for them there. Cándida introduced her friend to her neighbor and quickly apologized to Constantino that they wouldn't be able to go for a walk today. The group started their dinner. Tanita was looking at the handsome man with interest. She had a good understanding of people and could tell he was a real man. Tanita tried to start a conversation with him, but he responded minimally and mostly remained silent. It was clear that he was upset that there was the third person with them and that they wouldn't be able to go for a walk. After hastily finishing the meal, Constantino apologized and left the women alone. "Listen, what an interesting guy. Do you know who he is?" Tanita asked her friend. "Of course, we've been walking together for 2 days already. You won't believe where he works and what he does." "Well, quit stalling with your answer. You know I don't like those theatrical pauses." "He's the chief of the department for the investigation, specifically in charge of important cases." "What do you think?" "Wow!" Tanita exclaimed. "How do you find these unique men? I don't understand. I don't look for anyone, they find me themselves. Listen, let's finish eating and go for a walk. Can we order room service here?" "Of course. What would you like to order?" "Pizza and wine." "Aren't you full?" Cándida asked in surprise. "Pizza? At night? Is that really you, Tanita? I haven't eaten all day today. That's why I'd love to eat pizza." "All right, I'll order everything now." Cándida went to place the order, and when she returned, the girls went for a walk around the base. "Any news about Maximino?" Cándida finally gathered the courage to ask. "No, nothing. But I can give you some good news. Those men have been on duty near your house from morning till night. So it seems they don't know where Maximino is. Therefore, they're not involved in his missing." "Tanita, of course, it's not them. He took the money from the safe. They wouldn't have let him gather his things." "Did he take anything from his belongings?" "That's the thing, nothing at all. Only his documents and all the money. It's strange that he didn't leave me anything." "Cándida, what are you going to do? Will you file a police report?" "What's the point? What would I tell them? That my husband took all the money from home and disappeared? They'll just laugh it off. There's no crime committed, you see?" "I think you've been talking too much to Constantino," Tanita laughed. "Listen, maybe you should seek his help? Tell him about the company and the attack by the gangsters. I don't know if we can trust him. What if he's also helping the gangsters? How can we find out for sure? And what would I tell him? That my husband left me and ran away?" "That's true. By the way, I'll give you a new phone number so you'll have all the services now." "Thank you. Did you deliver the application for leave at the hospital?" "Yes, everything's in order. Your boss did scold me, though, but I lied very convincingly, so you'll be fine. Don't worry about your job. Any hospital would gladly take a skilled professional like you. It may seem that way, but when you start looking for work, no one seems to need you. But right now, that's the least of my concerns. What do you think you'll do next?" "I don't know, Tanita, honestly. I'm afraid to go back to my apartment. Maybe I should sell it?" "How will you sell it if it's registered under both of your names?" "Right, I didn't think about that. What should I do then?" "You can rent it out, but unofficially. And you can rent a place for yourself on the outskirts. You'll even make some extra money from the difference. But what if Maximino comes back home and finds strangers living there? I think he won't come back for now. He's hiding, waiting for the situation to resolve itself. You need to somehow give him a sign or a message." "But how?" Cándida started crying again. They were sitting on a bench in the park. There was no one around, and Cándida let her emotions flow freely. "I don't know what to do, Tanita. I don't understand why he left me. We could have gone hiding together. But he didn't even suggest it. Yeah, it's hurtful, for sure. After all, 8 years together. I don't know, my friend. It seems he had a different way of thinking than you and I. Well, or maybe he's confident that they won't touch you. Let's go to the room. The pizza is probably there by now," Tanita suggested. "I'm amazed. How can you think about food at a time like this?" Cándida exclaimed. "Whenever I'm nervous, I eat a lot. Plus, I didn't eat properly today, as I told you. All right, let's go. The last thing I needed was your hunger-induced fainting spell. As they were approaching the cabin, Cándida suddenly heard Constantino's voice. He was talking to someone on the phone. I need that information urgently, do you understand me? Constantino responded to something his opponent said, insisting. I don't care how you do it in such a short time. This is the task, get it done. That's it. His voice was stern and persistent. It was clear he was speaking to a subordinate. Cándida didn't want him to notice them, but Constantino had just moved away from his side of the cabin and headed towards them. Ladies, are you still taking a walk? Isn't it late? We're actually heading back to our place, Cándida flirted. Don't you want to join us and help us finish a bottle of wine? Cándida was ready to hit her. Why did she have to invite the neighbor for a gathering when she wanted to talk and think about her future and the search for Maximino? I'd love to, if Cándida doesn't mind. Constantino replied. Cándida opened her mouth to object, but Cándida beat her to it. Cándida definitely won't mind. We really enjoy your company. Come on, Constantino. I'll just go to my room for a minute and join you. Agreed, we'll wait. They entered the room, and Cándida immediately confronted her friend. Why did you invite him? I wanted to talk to you. Don't be a fool. You might need his help very soon. Connections like that aren't thrown away, darling. And he's looking at you like an owl watching a mouse, it's obvious. And you should take advantage of that. By the way, do you know if he's married? He got divorced recently and came here to heal his wounds. Well, this is the reason that you should take advantage from. Keep him close. That sounds so crude. Yes, but it's honest. There was a knock on the door, and Constantino entered, bringing a bottle of good wine and some fruit. And 5 minutes later, another bottle of wine and pizza were delivered. The company settled on the veranda, which was large and shared between the two rooms, so there were no issues. They sat outdoors until midnight and then moved to Cándida's room. Constantino left the girls and went back to his room late at night. The evening turned out to be warm and cheerful. Cándida once again realized that her neighbor had a positive influence on her. In his company, she could distract herself and forget about her current problems. Cándida, I think he's in love with you, Cándida said. He looks at you with such admiration. Wow, a guy falling in love with you in just 2 days. I wish I had your talents. Don't make things up, Cándida said. We're just talking. If that's just talking for you too, then I really don't understand relationships at all, Cándida smiled. Let's go to sleep. I always feel sleepy after being outdoors. Are you sure it's only because of that? Well, yes. What else could it be? Who is the doctor here, you or me? Did you make a pregnancy test? Stop it, I'm not pregnant, if that's what you're thinking. Well, let's see. Cándida went to take a shower while Cándida sat in the armchair, thinking about what to do with her friend. How could she help her? And what if Cándida wasn't mistaken and Cándida was indeed pregnant? In the morning, Cándida began to feel unwell, which finally convinced her friend of her pregnancy. Cándida, you need to make a test. I'm serious. Nonsense, I'm not pregnant. I'll prove it to you now. Cándida rummaged in her handbag and took out a women's calendar. But when she looked at it, her expression changed. Oh, I've had a delay of over a week. This can't be happening. We've been trying so hard and wanted a baby, but now is the most inconvenient time. Stop it, a child is always the right time. Especially for you, my dear, you're not 20 anymore, you're already 31. So we're going to have a baby, no other options. And what about Maximino? Am I going to give birth without a husband? I'm sure your Maximino will come back. And in any case, you're married. So there's nothing wrong with your reputation if that's what you're worried about. What does my reputation have to do with it? Can you imagine what it's like to raise a child alone? Hey, What do you mean alone? What about me? Your baby will have the most caring godmother in the world. So we'll manage. I'm not pregnant, Cándida stubbornly repeated, although she herself wasn't so sure anymore. The friends spent the whole day together. Tanita went to the nearest town to the pharmacy and bought a test for Cándida. Of course, it turned out to be positive. Tanita was so genuinely happy, as if she herself were pregnant, not Cándida. Her joyful cries were heard by Constantino. "Ladies, who of you won the prize?" he asked. "Cándida." Tanita shouted. "You have no idea what happened. I can't imagine it yet, but I hope you'll share your joy with me. Our Cándida is expecting a baby." Constantino's expression changed. It was evident that the news didn't please him as much as Tanita. But he hurried to congratulate the expectant mother on the upcoming changes. "Thank you, Constantino," Cándida said softly. "I haven't decided yet whether to be happy or upset." "Why? Is something wrong?" Hope shimmered in Constantino's eyes. "I'll tell you a little later, I promise, not now. I need to digest this news myself. Then I won't distract you. Enjoy your time, girls." Constantino left for his room, and the friends remained sitting on the veranda. Tanita needed to go back home as she had to work early in the morning. "Cándida, I have to leave. Don't fret here, take care of yourself. Everything will be fine, you'll see. Just promise me you won't do anything foolish." "Tanita, I'm a grown woman, and besides, I'm a medical professional. Interruption of the pregnancy is out of the question for me, so calm down." "Well, great. I'm at ease then." Tanita kissed her friend on the cheek and went to the room to pack. Call me when you get home. And if there's any news, call me too. Of course, have a good rest." Tanita hurried away, leaving Cándida sitting on the veranda. She gazed into the distance, as if trying to glimpse her own future. Now she had to decide how to move forward. To live in a new way. Cándida envisioned a rented apartment in a residential area. For some reason, the apartment seemed poor and humble to her. Why am I exaggerating? Many women raise children on their own. I have a decent salary, I can save up something before maternity leave. Then I'll receive maternity benefits. I have jewelry as a last resort. And maybe, just maybe, Maximino will come back and everything will be fine. "Cándida, aren't you freezing out here?" Constantino asked with concern. "It's getting chilly." "Yes, thank you. I'll go inside now." "Cándida, can I talk to you?" "Of course," she agreed. "Let's order something to eat, I'm getting hungry." "What would you like?" "Honestly, I feel like to have a juicy steak." "It's real, how can it be?" "Of course, it's okay." Constantino winked and rushed off. He returned 15 minutes later. Cándida was still sitting on the veranda. "Why didn't you go inside the house?" "I was waiting for you." "So, will we have steaks?" "Yes, in about 40 minutes, is that okay?" "Can you endure it?" "Sure." They entered the room. Cándida sat in the armchair, tucking her legs underneath her, while Constantino settled on the small couch opposite her. He silently observed her for a couple of minutes, as if contemplating how to start the conversation. Their silence was interrupted by a phone call. It was Constantino's phone ringing. On the phone, he answered sternly and formally after seeing who was calling. He listened to the report for about a minute, then in a tone that was still stern but warmer, he said, "Good job. All right, talk to you later." He hung up the phone and looked at Cándida in a completely different way. She understood that the caller had told him something important, but she couldn't even imagine that it was about her. "Now we can talk," Constantino said confidently. He no longer resembled the cheerful storyteller that Cándida had met a few days ago. Instead, he looked more like a serious boss ready to reprimand an erring subordinate. "Constantino, something happened? You look like I'm guilty of something." "Something did happen," but it's not your fault, don't worry. Please don't scare me. Cándida, I must apologize for interfering in something that's not my business. But I had no choice, so forgive me. I found out something and I have to tell you, and you'll decide for yourself whether I did the right thing or not. Do I really need to know this? I'm sure you do. Constantino paused and began speaking. I did some research about your husband. The attempted merger of his company is not true, to say the least. Your husband borrowed a significant amount of money from people he shouldn't have borrowed from. I'm not sure what his intentions were, but he couldn't pay it back. It was after that they offered him a merger to settle the debt. Maximino refused, and naturally, they started threatening him. You understand that such people don't give away such sums of money. The last time your husband was seen on the security cameras was near the shopping center. There, I think he changed his appearance and left the place as someone else. Cándida stared at Constantino in shock. She felt as if her neighbor was telling her another detective story that had nothing to do with her life, especially her husband. She remained silent, and Constantino continued. You need to change your place of living. It's clear that they have nothing to take from you. It was Maximino's business. The property is jointly owned, and you can't sell it without Maximino's presence. But they might try to pressure him through you. They have done such things before. That's why I can help you hide for a while until the situation is resolved. Cándida continued to remain silent and gaze at Constantino. It seemed like she had even stopped blinking and breathing, such was in shock. Constantino, are you sure this is true? Cándida asked. Of course. My guys gathered information about your spouse, Maximino, Constantino replied. I don't believe what you're saying. Why would Maximino need such a large sum of money? We had enough money, Cándida said. Perhaps he was gambling? Constantino suggested. No, I don't think so, Cándida replied. Then I don't know. Maybe he had plans to expand the business? Constantino proposed. No, he wouldn't, Cándida calmly responded. And suddenly she remembered something. Wait, half a year ago, Maximino mentioned that he wanted to open a business in the capital. He always liked that city and dreamed of moving there someday. We argued about it back then because I told him, can you imagine how much money we should have to start a business there and then compete? It's not our small town. Yes, our town is kinda big, but compared to the capital, it's small. He got upset with me and said he had calculated everything. That he was a successful businessman and I didn't understand anything about it. But I never thought he would actually do it. Especially not by borrowing such a huge amount of money from criminals. It seems he had a different perspective and wanted to take a risk. So, the question is, where did the money go? Those funds would have been enough to open his business in the capital, but there is no business. We checked. Could he have registered the company on someone else? Constantino asked. Unlikely, Maximino didn't trust anyone but me. But as it turns out, he didn't trust me either. And he doesn't have any relatives. His mother passed away 4 years ago, Cándida replied. Then I don't understand. Something doesn't add up here. Most likely, he planned to run away and hid the money somewhere. Otherwise, how do you explain where he spent this money? Constantino speculated. Cándida gazed thoughtfully out of the window. Her world had crumbled, her husband turned out to be a liar and a traitor. And she had believed in him, especially the fact that he had been unjustly targeted by criminals. She believed that he loved her and would never betray her. But in reality, it was all a lie. But why? Why did he go through all of this? Why did he marry her? Why did he deceive her for so many years? I don't care anymore. I don't want to investigate anything. I don't need his money, apartment, business, or anything else. I want to leave this city, Cándida said. Cándida, don't shoot from the hip. I understand you're upset, bad things happen to you. But you can't go on like this, especially considering your situation. Constantino, what am I supposed to do? Please understand me, I believed in him. I believed every his word. And he just left me and ran away. I understand, but life doesn't end here. It's always painful when someone close betray you, but you have a future. He gestured towards her abdomen. It's for the sake of that future that you need to keep living. And what do I tell this future when he grows up? Where is his father? The captain of a long-distance voyage? Or the heroic pilot who ejected during another test gone wrong? Cándida, don't stir things up. Many women raise children alone, and everything turns out fine. Many of them grow up to be remarkable individuals. My mother also raised me on her own. It was tough, but we managed. And you will too. I'll help you find a good clinic where you can earn a decent living. Cándida looked at Constantino and suddenly burst into tears. The bitterness of hurt and disappointment consumed her entire being. Constantino moved closer and took Cándida's hand. Cándida, don't cry. You need to think about your child. Everything will be fine, you'll see. You're an incredible woman and you deserve happiness. And so it shall be. At that moment, Cándida's phone rang. It was Tanita calling. Constantino picked up the phone and handed it to Cándida, but she shook her head and gestured for him to answer it himself. Cándida knew that her friend would be there in an hour if she didn't pick up the phone. Hello, Tanita. Constantino greeted her. We're fine. Cándida went to take a shower. All right. Please tell Cándida that I'm at home. Everything is fine. Good night. And then there was a knock on the door. Cándida flinched in surprise. Don't be scared, I'm with you, and I won't let anyone hurt you. Besides, I don't think the stakes will attack you, Constantino smiled. And indeed, it was the waiter who informed them that everything was ready, and the table on the veranda was set. Constantino grabbed a blanket for Cándida and suggested they go and have their meal. Cándida wanted to decline the offer, convinced that she lost her appetite along with her mood. But when she caught a whiff of the steaks, she realized she was mistaken. All right, I won't offer you wine, but here, have some juice as much as your heart desires. They sat on the terrace for about an hour and a half. Cándida indulged the meat wholeheartedly. It turned out to be very delicious. Thank you for everything, Cándida said when they returned to her room. Will you really help me with finding a job? I'd like to move to another part of the city, far away from my previous place of living and work. Of course, I'll help you. All right, you should have a rest, and I'll go. It's getting late, we'll talk tomorrow. Good night, Constantino. Good night, Cándida. In the morning, Cándida didn't show up for breakfast, but Constantino ordered breakfast to be delivered to her room, understanding that she must have overslept. After a delicious breakfast, Cándida went to look for Constantino, who was playing billiards with another man. When he saw Cándida, he apologized to his partner and approached her. Good morning. Well, good afternoon, Constantino smiled. Did you sleep well? Good morning. Yes, thank you for breakfast. I don't understand how your wife could leave you. You're not just a man, you're a treasure. Well, I recognize the old Cándida's compliments are pouring in. And they are well deserved, by the way. Then you should make up some new compliments. I've found a new job for you. You'll be working at a private clinic. He mentioned the name of the clinic, and Cándida's eyes widened in astonishment. It was a very prestigious clinic, the kind of job one could only dream of. Are you serious? Does it seem like I'm joking? The first 3 months will be a trial period, but it's just a formality. Nobody will fire you. The director of this clinic is an old friend of mine who owes me a lot. So, everything is fine. Does it suit you? Are you kidding? This is perfect. Well, great then. Your job will be as a pediatrician, in line with your specialization. They have a children's department and their own outpatient clinic. I don't know where exactly they'll assign you, but it doesn't matter, I think. It doesn't matter at all. Constantino, I don't know how to thank you. You're a wizard, I swear. That's not all. There's a small residential complex for staff next to the clinic. They'll allocate an apartment for you to live in. I've arranged it. If anyone ever tells me that miracles don't happen and that wizards don't exist, I'll prove them wrong. Constantino, you. I have no words. Cándida pecked Constantino on the cheek, and he immediately blushed. Keep it together. I am, after all, a living wizard, and not even an old one, he smiled. But it was clear that Cándida's reaction pleased him greatly. In the evening, Cándida called her friend and told her everything. Tanita was shocked by Maximino's gesture and everything that had happened, but most of all, she was astonished by Constantino. Cándida, you'd be a fool if you let such a man go. He's a treasure, not just a man. Tanita, I'm not ready for that right now, really. I haven't let go of my previous relationship yet, and you want me to jump into something new, especially with a baby on the way. But he knows you're pregnant, right? And it doesn't bother him. Or do you think he helps everyone like this, using his connections? Don't make me laugh. Even if you're not ready for a new relationship right now, keep him close so you don't lose him. All right, mommy, as you say. That's right. Listen to me, and everything will be fine. Constantino's vacation came to an end, and he left, leaving Cándida feeling very sad. She suddenly realized that this man had managed to occupy a special place in her heart in such a short time. The next day, she called Tanita and asked her friend to pick her up. Oh, someone said, I don't care about new relationships, the friend sarcastically remarked. And it turns out you do care. Tanita, okay, fine, you're right. I like him. Will you pick me up? Of course, I happen to have tomorrow off, so I'll come in the evening, we'll hang out, and tomorrow we'll leave together. Cándida didn't leave her room all day. Towards the evening, Constantino called. Hi, how are you feeling? Hi. Cándida exclaimed happily. It's great to hear from you. I'm doing fine, just feeling a bit bored. Really? Constantino, in turn, was delighted to hear that Cándida appreciated his absence. Yes, really. I'm leaving tomorrow. Should I pick you up? Thanks, Tanita will do it. I'll stay with her for a couple of days. I need to quit my previous job, and then I'll need your help. Is that okay? Of course. Should we get your things from the old apartment? Constantino guessed. It's interesting talking to you when you already know everything, right? Cándida laughed. Yes, I want to retrieve my things. Will you help me? I'm afraid to go there alone. No worries, it'll be easy. Don't fret about it. Thank you. They chatted for another 10 minutes and agreed to call each other the next evening when Cándida would already be in the city. In the evening, Tanita arrived, and the friends sat on the veranda until midnight, then moved to the room and chatted until almost morning. They finally went to sleep around 6. When Cándida woke up, she packed her belongings, they had lunch at a restaurant, and then they left for the city. In the evening, Cándida called Constantino as promised. The next day, she and Constantino went to her and her husband's old apartment and retrieved her things. Then it was time to quit her job. The hospital director was outraged and didn't want to let her go, but Cándida told him she was pregnant and would be leaving soon anyway. With a heavy heart, the hospital director reluctantly agreed. After that, Cándida went to her new workplace. Constantino had told her to find Andres Nogues and speak to him, so she had to wait for him for almost 2 hours as he was in a meeting. Once she settled into her new job, Cándida went to inquire about the apartment. After receiving the keys, she called Constantino to report that everything went smoothly and they could move in tomorrow and start her duties on Monday. All right, today is Thursday, you'll move tomorrow, and we'll celebrate the housewarming right away. And your new life begins on Monday. Are you ready? Constantino asked. I never thought life could take such sudden turns. It's like everything is turned upside down in just a few days. Well, these are good changes. So everything is fine. In the morning, Constantino called and said he would arrive by lunchtime, so Cándida should be ready. Constantino, all my things are packed in suitcases. What should I do to prepare? Great. I'll come over and help. Don't you dare carry the bags downstairs yourself. Yes, Captain. Cándida playfully replied. The new apartment was luxurious. Even Cándida couldn't believe that employees were given such accommodation. It was too extravagant, a 2-bedroom apartment equipped with the latest technology and freshly renovated. It had a warm and cozy atmosphere. The apartment was spacious and bright, with one room clearly intended as a nursery. Oh, you're so lucky with this apartment, said Cándida. She immediately understood that Constantino had rented this apartment for Cándida. They don't provide such housing to employees. Wow, the management at your clinic cares so much. Am I not getting something? Cándida was surprised. Constantino wasn't in the apartment at that moment. He was bringing things from the car. Cándida, seriously, you don't understand? Cándida was surprised. No, what am I supposed to understand? Cándida, in turn, genuinely wondered. It was Constantino who rented this apartment for you. Well, it's obvious. No, Andres Nogues told me that the apartment was provided. Sure, Constantino couldn't persuade his acquaintance. My goodness, how can you be so naive at your age? Once you start working, ask your colleagues who else has been blessed with such luck as you. You'll be very surprised. Cándida snorted and went to the kitchen, not believing Cándida. When all the things were moved and partially unpacked, Constantino suggested celebrating Cándida's move in a restaurant. Maybe I can cook something? Cándida offered. I'm curious, do you have groceries at home? Cándida asked. Well, the fridge is stocked with food, Cándida said. And then Cándida couldn't help but laugh. And you want to tell me that the hospital management kindly filled your fridge with goodies as a thank you for being a medical professional? Constantino. She looked at him. Maybe you'll confess already, otherwise, my friend thinks I'm an idiot. Constantino lowered his gaze to the floor, while Cándida looked at him intently. Constantino, is it true? Did you rent this apartment for me? Yes, it's true. I wanted to help you. So? Triumphantly declared Cándida. Does anyone want to apologize? Okay, I'm sorry. You were right, Cándida said to her friend and turned to Constantino, but why? I can rent a place myself. I'll have a good salary now, and I can even save money. Well, go ahead and save, but it's not difficult for me, or rather, it's nice to do something nice for you. The apartment is paid for a year in advance, Constantino confessed. But there's one condition. What is it? Cándida asked nervously. You'll allow me to visit you both, Constantino said shyly. Cándida felt like a third wheel and urgently needed to come up with a reason to leave them alone. Of course, I'll be very happy, Cándida replied. So, guys, are we going to the restaurant or not? Cándida intervened. Of course, let's go. Cándida just needs to get ready, and then we'll leave. All right, you convinced me, Cándida agreed. At the restaurant, Cándida and Constantino often looked at each other, and Cándida noticed it and looked for an excuse to leave them alone. And suddenly, her phone rang. It doesn't matter who it is, the important thing is that I have an opportunity to leave them alone, Cándida decided. She apologized and stepped aside to take the call. When she returned, she said she was urgently needed at work. Cándida worked as a chief technologist at a company, and she could be called in at any moment. Giving her friend a kiss and wishing them a pleasant evening, Cándida hurriedly left. After dinner, they returned to Cándida's apartment. It was evident that Constantino wanted to stay, but Cándida wasn't ready for that yet. I'm sorry. I can't do it right now. I need some time. I really like you, a lot. But not now, okay? She leaned in and gently kissed him on the lips. I understand everything, Cándida. I'm not rushing you. It's okay, I'll wait. Constantino kissed her again and left. From that day on, a new life began for Cándida. She loved her job, the team was very good. Not like it was at her previous job. Her colleagues were polite and attentive. Of course, there were some minor issues, but they were nothing compared to what she had experienced in her old team. Constantino often visited her and sometimes stayed overnight. They had transitioned from being friends to being lovers a long time ago. Cándida was truly happy. She hardly thought about Maximino anymore, except when the child served as a reminder of her past life. Today, Cándida had to go to have an ultrasound to determine the baby's gender. Constantino offered to go with her. Constantino, I can go by myself. Why? You have me, don't you? Many women come for this procedure with their husbands. I don't want you to feel awkward. Cándida looked at Constantino with adoration and gratitude. She had thought about it herself, but didn't dare to ask. He already spent so much time with her. The ultrasound revealed that Cándida was having a boy. Her happiness knew no bounds. She had always dreamed of having a son. I'm so happy that I'm having a son. I don't know why, but I've always dreamed of having a boy. Cándida, I'm a little disappointed now, Constantino said, feeling upset. Why? What's wrong? Cándida asked, alarmed because she didn't want to upset or hurt Constantino. Why only you? Maybe it should be us instead? Cándida turned to Constantino and looked at him. What do you mean? Cándida, we're adults. I love you and our child. It doesn't matter who the biological father is, I'll raise him if you allow me, of course. And will you accept my proposal? Will you marry me? Constantino, I can't marry you. I'm already legally married. We'll figure out that issue. Your consent is what matters to me. Of course, I agree. I love you very much too. Well then, great. We'll start preparing for the wedding. While your belly hasn't grown too big. A month later, they got married. Cándida didn't even ask Constantino how he managed to arrange the documents. He simply took her passport and returned in the evening with a stamp indicating her divorce. Yes, he clearly used his position, but Cándida believed it was the right thing to do. Since her husband had abandoned her and didn't need her, why should she shed tears and wait for him for years, raising the child alone? Cándida was the happiest of all after Constantino. Oh, thank goodness you set that woman straight and put her on the right path. Otherwise, she would have sat there, all in tears, waiting for some mysterious miracle, she lamented into her friend's ear, and Cándida laughed at her words. Cándida, you're so funny. Now it's your turn to get married. Yeah, where can I find someone like your Constantino? In my opinion, he's unique and one of a kind. I think your gentleman is out there somewhere. You just haven't met him yet, Cándida reassured her friend. At the appointed time, Cándida gave birth to a son named Cirillo. Cirillo Poletto sounds nice, the proud father decided, and Cándida didn't object, she liked the name too. After the birth of their child, Cándida devoted herself entirely to her son and husband, and Constantino helped his wife as much as he could. In the early months, Cirillo was very restless and slept poorly, causing Cándida to become exhausted. But gradually, everything normalized. Cirillo settled into a new rhythm of life, and Cándida was able to establish a household routine. 5 years had passed since Cándida's ex-husband disappeared, and Cirillo turned 4, attending kindergarten. Cándida had long returned to work, Constantino received a promotion, and he started spending more evenings at home. Cándida married Constantino's colleague and gave birth to a girl. One Friday evening, when their son was already asleep, Constantino approached his wife from behind, embraced her, and quietly asked, "Maybe it's time for us to give Cirillo a little sister? What do you say?" Cándida smiled and turned to face her husband. I've been thinking the same thing. I'll go on a business trip, and when I come back, we can start trying. I don't get it. What business trip? We're opening a branch in the neighboring city, and since we haven't found medical personnel there yet, they're sending us there on a 2-week business trip in turns. Children get sick everywhere. You're leaving us for a whole 2 weeks? Nightmare. Constantino was upset. Well, okay. You can manage it. I've been stretching it out as long as I could, using the excuse of having a young child. But I can't postpone it any longer. I have to go. I'll miss you all so much. If anything happens, Tanita will help you. No need, we're adults, we can handle it ourselves. And Tanita doesn't have time, her daughter is 2 years old. Well, 2.5. You see, she's busy herself. Don't worry, go, and don't worry about us, we'll manage. We'll hold on for a week, and then I have my vacation. We'll come visit you, Constantino smiled. Oh, that will be great. I won't be able to stand being without you for long. When are you leaving? The day after tomorrow. Cándida had to leave on Sunday to start work at the clinic on Monday. The first workday went relatively smoothly, with only a few patients. Cándida thought that working in such a small town could even be boring. Half the day went by with almost nothing to do. But the next day, she regretted her thoughts. It was a chaotic day. There were a lot of children to take care of, and then she had to do the services of a home doctor. At 5 o'clock, Cándida realized she hadn't eaten anything all day. In the morning, she only had coffee, and usually, she would have a snack at the clinic. But here, the schedule was completely different, and there was no time for lunch. She still had to make 2 visits, to a 6-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. The boy was closer to the clinic, so she visited him first. The child had a common cold, nothing serious. His temperature wasn't very high either. Then Cándida visited another girl, and now she could finally eat something. Cándida, this is the last patient for today, and then we can go home. I don't understand how you manage this pace, wondered Kosh, the young 25-year-old driver. What can I do, Kosh? Someone has to do it, right? And children, they're the most interesting patients. You know best. Cándida entered the house, went up to the 2nd floor, and rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, an elderly woman opened the door and invited the doctor inside. Demetria is really sick, with a high temperature. We don't know what to do. The grandmother wailed. Don't worry, we'll figure it out now, Cándida reassured her. The apartment was modest. It was even strange that its residents could afford to call a doctor from a private paid clinic. And the visit was quite expensive for a town like this. Cándida entered the children's room, where a fair-haired girl was lying on a bed, looking frightened at the doctor who had entered. It was evident that she was very scared. Demetria, don't be afraid. Auntie is just going to examine you, that's all, the grandmother said. But she won't give me an injection, right? The girl asked. No, she won't, the grandmother hurried to reassure her granddaughter. Cándida looked at the elderly woman and shook her head disapprovingly. Why did you lie to her? If she has a high temperature, I will have to give her a fever-reducing injection, she whispered. Demetria often stays in the hospital, she's already scared of doctors. She has had health problems since birth, the grandmother said helplessly. Where are the girl's parents? The parents? They're not here, I'll explain it to you later. All right, Cándida approached Demetria's bed and sat on a small chair next to it. After talking with the girl for a while, Cándida managed to convince Demetria to allow her to listen to her chest and take her temperature. Cándida was generally good with children and always knew how to persuade even the most stubborn little ones. The temperature wasn't too high. It's nothing to worry about. We must definitely get some tests done tomorrow morning, and the primary care doctor will provide an accurate diagnosis. Can I get the tests done at your clinic? Of course, but it will be a paid service. That's fine, we'll cover all the expenses. Then no problem, I'll write down the name of the medication for you now. You need to go to the pharmacy and buy it. It will relieve her symptoms, slightly lower the temperature, and then allow Demetria to get some sleep. Cándida took the prescription and pen. She was ready to write when suddenly she noticed a framed photograph on the table and was stunned. Maximino, who had disappeared 5 years ago, was looking at her from the photo. Cándida felt a rush of heat and her hands trembled. How could this be? Could it be a doppelganger? But that couldn't be possible. Cándida knew very well that such doppelgangers didn't exist. She handed the prescription to the grandmother, bid farewell to Demetria, and wished her a speedy recovery. As the woman walked into the corridor, Cándida couldn't hold back and asked, "Excuse me, is the man in the photograph Demetria's father?" "Yes, that's my son-in-law, Constantino." "I'm sorry, what's his name?" "Constantino." "And where is he? Does he live with you?" "Of course, he went away on business but should be back soon." "And Demetria's mother?" "She's at work." "Well, actually, she's abroad. She goes away for some time and then comes home for a week." "That's very interesting, but the girl is still too young to be left without her mother." "You know, I've told them that. But they're doing some kind of business, as they say, and they don't listen to me at all. What can I do? Does Maximino not work?" Cándida realized her mistake and quickly corrected herself. "Oh, I mean Constantino. He just looks so much like my classmate Maximino. That's why I asked who it was. They resemble each other so much." "No, Constantino doesn't work. He earns well abroad." "I see. Then why doesn't he go abroad instead of his wife?" "I don't know, honestly. I don't ask, and they don't tell me anything on their own." "I see. Well, go back to your granddaughter. Or better, go to the pharmacy, and I'll stay here with Demetria so the girl won't get scared. I noticed there's a pharmacy at the end of your house." "Thank you so much, Doctor. I'll be quick." The grandmother of Demetria ran off, leaving Cándida standing in the doorway of Demetria's room. She looked at the girl and tried to understand how it happened that her ex-husband already had a new family and didn't feel any guilt about abandoning her, Cándida, to the whims of fate. Did he really not care about the woman he had spent 8 years with? Cándida's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. It was too quick for the grandmother, so Cándida tensed up. And she was right. The door opened, and Maximino, or Constantino, as he was now called, entered the apartment. "Is it you?" He was visibly startled upon seeing his ex-wife. He even took a step back towards the exit, but Cándida stopped him. "Calm down, I came here as a doctor for your daughter." "How is she?" "She'll be fine, it's just a cold." Maximino entered his daughter's room, bent down, and kissed the child. In that moment, Cándida wanted to say that he had another son, and he seemed to not care about him at all. But she decided against it. Why bother? Cirillo has a wonderful father who has been raising him since birth. A father who truly loves him and would never betray him, unlike his biological father. Since Demetria was asleep, Maximino turned to Cándida and unexpectedly asked in a harsh tone, "So, what now? Are you going to demand your share? And a portion of the money we saved together, which I took? Tell me, don't you have anything else to say to me? Anything you want to ask? Explain? Why did you leave me 5 years ago without a word, leaving me with no money, no chance to sell the apartment? How could you do that? I can't believe that in 5 years, you couldn't find a way to contact me. Cándida, I had no other choice." "You're a liar. There's always a choice. And every person can choose whether to become a traitor or not. You chose the first option, much to my deep regret." Maximino looked at his ex-wife in astonishment. "You've changed a lot. You've become someone else. Of course, it's been 5 years. Didn't your conscience torment you all these years? What should have tormented me? I was saving my own life and couldn't think about anyone else. Anyone else? Cándida got genuinely angry. Am I anyone else to you? 8 years of our life mean nothing to you? God, in the beginning, I tormented myself, thinking I was a traitor, worrying that something had happened to you. I didn't even know where or how to find you. And you're not just a traitor. I don't even want to waste any more time on you. Especially since I've already wasted way too much. I'm sorry that my husband turned out to be such a scumbag. Hey, choose your words carefully. You're at my house. How we talked. What if tomorrow some gangsters, to whom you still owe money, come to your house? Will you like that turn of events? They will scare your wife. Your daughter. Do you like that? As they scared me. You won't do that. I won't. You know why? Because I feel sorry for your child. She's not guilty that her father is a bastard. I really hope Demetria will never find out that her father can also be a despicable traitor and easily trade her life for his own. At that moment, the door opened and the grandmother entered with medicine in her hands. Constantino, you're back? That's great. Demetria was asking for you. Yes, everything is fine. I'll accompany the doctor and be home soon. Maybe the doctor wouldn't mind having coffee with us? The grandmother suggested. Thank you for the invitation, but I need to go. As soon as Demetria wakes up, give her the medicine right away. And make sure she drinks plenty of fluids. It's very important. Okay, thank you very much. Take care. Cándida said goodbye and left the building. Maximino followed her. You know, when I imagined our reunion, I thought I would run to you, hug you, and kiss you for a long time. That's how it was for 4 days after your disappearance. Until I learned the truth. And when I did, I realized that I had been living with someone else. With the character I had invented myself. Then, a few years later, I replayed our entire life in my head and realized that you had always been like this, cunning, strange, and evasive. Only then did I consider these qualities positive because I was convinced that with such qualities, one could have a business. But over time, I realized I was wrong. I know many businessmen who remain decent people because they conduct their business honestly. They don't get involved with gangsters or abandon their wives in difficult times to save their own skins. Talking to you now makes me uncomfortable. It's disgusting and revolting. It's as if garbage has been dumped on my head. It turned out to be a strange meeting. So you're not planning to take my money from me? Is that the only thing that concerns you? Money? I don't need your money. I have my own. Maximino suddenly understood that Cándida wasn't going to turn him in or demand a share of the money. And he decided to change the tone of the conversation. Okay, I'm sorry. How about we go somewhere, talk calmly, and have some coffee? No, thank you. Go home, Constantino. And I will go to my Constantino, the real one, the loving and beloved one. To the man who values emotions and people, not money. Cándida turned around and ran downstairs. She got into her car and asked Coach to drive faster. Did something happen, Cándida? Were you attacked? No, Coach, everything is fine. Just a ghost from the past. Please drop me off near that store. I want to take a walk. No problem. Cándida got out of the car and slowly walked towards the hotel. Betrayal-filled tears streamed down her cheeks, revealing her state of utter disappointment. She had hoped until the very end that Maximino wasn't a traitor. That everything Constantino had told her back then wasn't entirely true. No, she believed Constantino and knew he wasn't lying to her. But what if one of his subordinates had made a mistake back then and gathered the wrong information? Hope lived in Cándida's heart until today. Hope that the person she had spent 8 years with wasn't the person Cándida described. She so desperately wanted this long-awaited meeting to put everything in its place. And it did, just not the way or in the order she expected. Cándida wiped away her tears, but they continued to flow. It felt as if they had been building up all these 5 years and now, finally, found a reason to pour out. And along with these tears, the last warm memories of the past leaked away. The past that belonged to Maximino. That's it, it's over now. No more memories and torment. I did everything right. She dialed Constantino's number. Hello, my dear. How are my most beloved men? Hello, Mommy. We're sad and bored without you. That's why me and our son decided to drop everything and come to you today. We hope you missed us too. I missed you so much. I love you both and I'm waiting for you. Cándida was about to hang up the phone but then added, Constantino? Yes, my love. You're the best man in the whole world. No, in the entire universe. I love you so much. And I love you too. Wait for us, we'll be there soon. Cándida hung up the phone and walked further along the road with a smile on her face. She felt happy. She did everything right.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.